We move now to the front bench. Once the Minister has spoken, we'll go back to Owen Thompson, who'll do the wind-up. So we go to the SNP spokesperson, Chris Stevens.
Thank you, Ms McVeigh. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I congratulate my good friend and comrade, the Honourable Member for Midlothian, for securing this debate. He will recall, I'm not just saying that because he's the Chief Whip of our group, I'm saying that because he will know that he and I regularly found ourselves in front page of some of the more right-wing newspapers in Scotland actually condemning us for having the temerity to ask for a minors' inquiry in Scotland. So that the Honourable Member for Midlothian has, for many years, along with a number of others, asked for a Scottish inquiry. And I think it would be only right and fair to praise the efforts of a friend of mine, former member of the Scottish Parliament, Neil Findlay, who was one of the lead campaigners in ensuring that there was a minors' inquiry in Scotland. And I do think that Neil is sadly missed in the Scottish Parliament, but I know that he's continuing to do great work with trade unions in Scotland. So, as other members have said, and I do want to congratulate all the members who have spoken, and I do want to say to another friend, the Honourable Member for Wansbeck, he has nothing to apologise for. Nothing to apologise for at all. And I think that perhaps the events has probably made him for the better, and it's certainly made him a very good Member of Parliament. So the Scottish Minors Pardon Bill is an important and historic step towards trying to aid reconciliation. It's going to start helping to heal some of the wounds within Scotland's mining communities. Groundbreaking legislation, Ms McVeigh, that will restore dignity to those convicted, provide comfort to their families, and I would hope bring the start of some closure to the sense of injustice members of mining communities may continue to feel. We very much sympathise with miners who lost out on redundancy payments and pension rights as a result of being sacked by the National Coal Board after being arrested or convicted for actions while participating in the strike. And I think that I hope that it would put to some of the demonisation, and we even saw some of that last week, Ms McVeigh, of trade unions who take industrial action on behalf of their members. Perhaps that the demonisation that we saw in the miners' strike is very much evident in the last week towards the rail workers. I take the view that those who take industrial action are exercising their human rights, and they have a human right to withdraw their labour against any employer. As Professor Jim Murdoch of the School of Law at Glasgow University, who works with Mr Scott QC in the Independent Review, said, as members of the Independent Review, our task was primarily to listen, to show that those affected by the miners' strike had a voice more than a third of a century later. At each of these meetings we held, it was clear that the pain felt by former miners and their families was still raw. The response to the miners' strike at the time left a deep scar in too many communities. The stories showed without doubt that the criminal justice system all too often reacted in an arbitrary and disproportionate manner. Our task was to seek to promote a sense of reconciliation, and we are pleased that our report and its recommendation has received clear support today in the Scottish Parliament. So the Miners' Strike Pardon Scotland Bill pardons the offences of breach of the peace, obstructing a police officer, breach of bail and theft, which occurred during the 1984-85 disputes. And the new legislation will hopefully has been welcomed by the National Union of Mine Workers in Scotland. And that brings us now to having the Scottish context why there should be why the UK Government should now launch a UK-wide inquiry. I think the Cabinet Secretary for Justice in Scotland, Keith Brown, puts it rather well when he says, it is now right that the Government recognises the passing of this historic legislation and gives further consideration to a UK-wide public inquiry and the payment of compensation to former miners. He then says that he has written to the Home Secretary urging her to reconsider her position, giving the strong support for this landmark bill. And perhaps the Minister could tell us if the Home Secretary has indeed received that letter and when the Scottish Government will receive a response. Now, as other members have said, Ms McVeigh, many of us who support the inquiry were surprised when the then Home Secretary Amber Rudd announced in October 2016 that the UK Government was ruling out an inquiry into the events at Orgreave in South Yorkshire, and probably referred to as one of the most notorious flashpoints in the miners' strike. And I too have received an excellent briefing from the Orgreave Justice and Truth campaign, and I think they are correct to ask the UK Government to reconsider, because of new evidence that's transpired since October 2016, the disclosure of documents that exist that are being embargoed until 2066. I don't think we should wait until then. The existence and location of documents in the South Yorkshire archives, and indeed new evidence that's coming to light as a result of the ongoing undercover police inquiry, of which the National Union of Mine Workers is a core participant. And indeed, of most concern to me, the recent Daily Mirror article, which has exposed a conversation by Amber Rudd about the reasons not to hold an Orgreave inquiry because it would slur the memory of Thatcher and upset party members. Well, protecting someone's legacy, Ms McVeigh, I would suggest, is not a reason not to have this inquiry. And I think that certainly raises alarm bells with me, as I'm sure it does with other members of this House. I'll give way to my good friend.
Thanks very much for giving way. Can I just say that I totally agree with you with regard to Neil Findlay. What a tremendous campaign he's run. But would my honourable friend like to comment on the fact that during the miners' strike, Scotland represented 10% of the workforce in the National Coal Board, but 30% of those who were arrested following their arrest, were sacked. That was terribly unequal right away through the country. Would you like to comment on why perhaps that might have been?
Well, I think it's it's actually the independent review makes it very clear. It was because of the disproportionate actions of the police at that point and the justice system. And I too was alarmed at the figures when they were brought to my attention. So my honourable friend is absolutely right. And he will also be aware, I'm sure, of the Labour Party report that was prepared by Gordon Brown and Merlin Rees, a future Prime Minister and a former Home Secretary, which also raised and highlighted the concerns then, in 1985, about the strike, and recommended there should be a Royal Commission into the whole circumstances leading up to the strike, as well as the conduct of the strike, but also looking at the wider constitutional aspects of the development of policing, including accountability. So the demands, even then in 1985, talk about some of the issues which my honourable friend has raised. Ms McVeigh, I hope that the Minister will respond positively. I do think that he should take very serious note of what not just myself but other honourable members have said about some of the vilification of trade union activity that's going on presently. Because that vilification we saw during the miners' strike in 84 to 85, and we're seeing some of it today, and perhaps he could encourage some of his colleagues to engage in perhaps a better discourse when discussing these issues. Thank you.
Alex Cunningham.
Thank you very much, Mrs McVeigh. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship.